Boss been bugging you? Come on in. Let's go for a drive. David, welcome to What's Bugging You.
Thank you so much. It's a journey I've been looking forward to.
Well, man, Roscoe's been really wanting you to ride with us. So I have here with me David Galvan. He's a director of Soul Shop.
It's hard to say. It is hard to say.
And you do a variety of things, largely in the realm of suicide prevention, mental health coaching.
Yeah.
I thought a great question to get us going is one that I get often with so many students that come to us. They're so compassionate and so caring. I love this generation and the fact that they are. Many of them are struggling, mental health, thinking about suicide, but so many of them have friends that are. In fact, it seems like almost all of them have friends that are struggling in some way. And so often I sit down to have conversations with students like, how do I help my friend who's struggling? Now, sometimes it's them, couched in the language of my friend.
The friend is myself.
How do I help my friend who's struggling, who's thinking about suicide, who I'm worried that is thinking about suicide, who's depressed? Man, this is such a huge topic. Help get us started. Like, what do we do when a student comes to me? What should I do? What do you do?
And it's a difficult topic to even begin with, right?
Yeah.
Suicide's not something that we're like, oh yeah, it's just a great topic. We're just going to discuss like, how was your day?
Right.
And so we actually, with students, I would first and foremost just encourage and affirm them. That says, hey, I'm so glad that you care. I'm so glad that you have empathy at this level. And even for our students to equate that to how Jesus has care for us, especially for those that are hurting, those that are navigating despair or desperation or even thoughts of suicide. So just affirming your student's care for another student is a significant move. Just even in the sense that gives them affirmation, like, oh, it's okay for me to care this much.
Right.
The second thing I would do is to encourage them and to begin the conversation of why does this burden them? Because we know in our generation that we see this generation of young people that they often don't have these conversations because they don't want to be a burden. I've heard it said numerous times as I've been in classrooms. I ask, why don't you have these conversations with parents or adults or even with your friends? And it's because I don't want to be a burden to them. They already have so much going on. And so this vice versa conversation that's happening with, hey, it might be me as the friend, or I'm worried about my friend, is because we've been taught that we aren't supposed to be a burden.
Right. They have enough burdens of their own. Why am I going to add to their burden my burdens?
Yes. And didn't Jesus say something about this? Casting our burdens on to him and sharing our burdens and sharing the load. And this is where I would say the third piece about it is finding who's that trusted adult and encouraging the students to know who are like the people in their lives that they can go to and they can trust. Often it might be a coach, a teacher. Sometimes it's a neighbor, an uncle, and our students need to know something that I teach often is this idea that who are their three? Okay. Who are the three people in their world that if they found themselves in desperation or in time of thoughts of suicide or that I would like to end my life, like who are the people that they could reach out to in the midst of that despair? And you parent, you adult, you coach listening, like tuning in, like who are the people for you? Because in order for us to, as adults, to care well for our students, we got to first care well for ourselves. And this is a statement that Jesus made, right? He said, love your neighbor as you love yourself, which implies that you have to love yourself. And so in order for us to love our neighbor to the degree that says when they're at the precipice of death, that this student, I would just encourage them that, who are your three?
Yeah.
Who are the people? And again, that's why we started with affirming them and thanking them for reaching out to us.
Yeah. So when I'm getting this impression that so many students have friends that are struggling with mental health, depression, having suicidal ideation.
Right.
Is this accurate? Is it just my impression, or I mean, you are in this field, you know some of the stats.
Yeah, we know that it's estimated. Living Works, which is an organization that does a lot of work in suicide prevention. 6% of America is thinking about suicide at any given moment. So let's just do simple numbers, and these are in a congregation of 200.
Okay.
There's 12 people coming each Sunday thinking about ending their lives.
Wow.
In a group of youth students, the estimation is higher. It's closer to 17%. So they're looking at 3 to 5 students in a group of 20. You know, they're looking at if in that group that we're finding that there's more that are actually thinking about suicide. And so when those stats come out, that's just one level of suicide. We're thinking about people who are worried. We got a friend. You're talking about a friend. You're worried about somebody. If you have a relationship with 17 individuals, there's more likely that you're going to see somebody. You also have the last two categories is suicide attempts and someone who's lost someone. We know that if someone has lost someone to suicide, for every death by suicide, there are 115 people that are typically impacted.
Wow.
There are, for suicide attempts, or what we call lived experience, we have seen in 2022, there was close to 1.2 million suicide attempts. Now, these are estimated because we don't know every suicide attempt, but that's a large majority of our community. It's estimated that 54% of America has been impacted by suicide.
My goodness.
Over half.
That's okay.
It's a staggering stack to
what
think about.
What I'm seeing is more than accurate. Like
yeah.
It's accurate, and it's even worse.
Yep.
It sounds like. I mean, from my own life, I've known 5 people.
Yeah.
That have died by suicide.
Yep.
One former student this year.
Yeah.
That I learned about a couple months ago, and so many students that are asking me this question.
Yeah.
It's because they don't want to see something happen to one friend that they already saw happen
to another friend.
Yeah. Okay, so then give me advice as if I'm this person, or how would you give advice? Like, what do we actually do now that we know someone is contemplating suicide, or we suspect they are,
yeah,
and we're worried about them?
Yeah.
What do we actually do beyond making sure that we are healthy? We have 3 people in place.
Yeah.
This is a real thing. Affirming them.
Yeah.
Their compassion.
Yeah.
Okay, let's
now
maybe get more practical. Like, what do we do?
So this is more engaged, right? You're gonna actually cross the threshold of intimacy, and what I call that, because it gets very vulnerable. Because if you have a consideration that you have a friend that's you're ultimately concerned, and you're like, I'm pretty sure they're thinking about suicide.
Yeah.
You find yourself with the opportunity to ask a question. And this question is a really disheartening question. It's a very difficult question, and it can be very concerning. And you can feel awkward even asking this question. And the question is, and it can be phrased in a couple different ways, but I often encourage this, is number one is, when people are going through what you're going through, they often think about suicide. Are you thinking about suicide? A more direct question, which I would encourage to be used, is if you're with a friend and say, hey, I'm concerned for you. Are you thinking about killing yourself? That's a very hard question. It seems very invasive.
Does bringing this up, so some people are scared to bring this up because it might give the other person the idea.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a real possibility. Maybe I should be thinking about suicide.
Yeah.
Is that?
It's actually a myth that I'll dispel, and research has dispelled. Most people who are thinking about suicide, you're not going to put that thought in their head. You are actually going to give them a space to now say what's been in their head.
Yeah.
You're going to be able to release that because you gave them permission now to talk about this. Because the moment you ask that question, somebody has the opportunity to answer one of 3 ways. Yes, no, or maybe. And a maybe's a yes.
Okay.
Right? So if they say yes, and they say yes to having a plan, then you can say, the next question or the next sentence I do, tell me how suicide became part of your story. Tell me how suicide became part of your thinking, and allow that individual to share. Could you imagine holding on to something for so long? There's probably been numerous secrets that I've held on to, or something I was anticipating, and I'm just like, I can't tell anybody, I can't tell anybody, I can't tell anybody, and I'm just waiting for someone to give me permission to say.
Yes.
That's what it's like for an individual considering suicide. They're like, I just need to tell someone that was willing to listen to me.
And these these compassionate students are genuinely willing
to listen. They want to sit there with you.
Yes.
And this is why I tell students
how you do it.
How you do it and how you want to connect to an adult.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to say connect to an adult instantaneously, because you as a student shouldn't be bearing that on your own. So once you've asked that question, like tell me how this, they're listening and say, now, can we go get help together?
Okay.
Can we do this together? How would you like to go get help? I think one of the most important questions that I want people to know is that everybody receives help differently.
Okay.
Like, I'm a person that if I'm not well, I don't need you to hug me. Like, don't give me a hug. My wife, though, wants a hug.
Yeah.
My daughter, 18, she doesn't want a hug. I think it's amazing that we're going through this tunnel in the midst of this conversation.
Isn't it kind of weird?
Yeah, it's in the darkness, and
on
the other side, yeah, and it's coming out of the darkness is what we call suicide. It's coming out of the darkness into light. It's this idea that we as a person, when we ask this question, we can bring him into light.
Okay, because it was already there.
It's already there.
It was already there, just in the dark.
In the dark, and now we're in the light.
We can actually deal with it.
Now we can deal with it.
It can be dealt with.
The enemy will always keep everything in the dark, though. He wants to keep it closed in.
Okay.
And not to be shared. Because people think I'm weird, and people think that I'm off, or they might give me some platitudes. But the way that I'm helped, though, is that I need to know and ask the question. And I encourage parents and students, ask your friends this question. Say, when you're not well, what's one way that I'm helpful? And what's one way that I'm not helpful? Because we might find the very thing that we're doing to help them is hurting them. So there's I've done a lot of missions.
That's good advice, just as I'm thinking about parenting.
It's missions.
Yeah.
It's missions. You know how often we would go over to a third world country
goodness.
and build a playground? And they didn't need a playground. They're like, actually, we need a building for this like nurse to come every week because they come every week and we need that.
Yeah.
And so we do this with people, though, humanity. And as students and our friends,
we're tempted just to love other people the way that we want to be loved,
yes,
rather than seeing them for who they are.
Yes.
Okay.
And knowing that all of us feel and receive love differently. And so once we've gone through that question and we've listened to them, now providing them support, and what I would say is lead them to safety and not to solutions.
Okay.
Helping your friend know that, hey, we're safe and not to solution. Most of us don't need people to tell us how to fix our problem. I don't know the last time somebody came to you, hey, Trip, this is how you fix it.
That's when I stopped listening.
No, I don't need that. What I need is somebody to say, I'm safe, because when I feel safe, I make different choices.
Okay.
And what the cross affords to us and what Jesus has given us is the opportunity for this rescue idea that some people were like, hey, we're rescue. Okay, now you're safe. Now, he doesn't say, now make decisions this way. He says, here are all decisions. I'm going to lead you to safety, not to solutions.
Okay.
Accepting Jesus into our life is not the fix-all.
Right.
It's just the beginning.
Man, this is so good to hear, even when we're talking about suicide, that there's this stigma, right?
Yes.
I'm a Christian. I shouldn't be thinking about these things. I shouldn't be struggling with depression. You're not a good Christian if you are struggling, and that's just a flat-out lie.
It's a flat-out lie. Do you know Jesus did? I'm going to take you, we're going to just expand our theological imagination for just a minute. Jesus is in the 40 days. Okay, remember, Jesus is in the wilderness, and Satan, the enemy comes in flesh, like the enemy's there. It's not like this mystical thing that happened. And he says to Jesus, he says first, if God is, if he's really like your life, like turn these bread into stones, and then he goes, hey, if he truly loves you, he says, if God is who he is, and the scripture says that he'll catch you, jump off this building.
So he was tempted in some way
with life or death.
Interesting.
Ending his life. He goes, because he says, your head will not hit a stone. Like you'll not hit it. He'll catch you. And the enemy was literally pushing the envelope to say, does he really care about you? And I think when individuals are experiencing suicide, they want to know that people care for them. They are standing on the precipice of darkness. They're standing on this thing and saying, do people really care? Do I really matter? And then when you see on the other side that people care, and you can put yourself into that, like now the stigma's gone. Because I know that even just using the word suicide in a sentence can actually change someone's life.
Mm-hmm.
I had a story where I was doing a training and an individual got back to me and she said, I told my friend about your training that I went to. I told her I went to a suicide prevention training. And this woman was in her mid-60s and she said, the moment I said that, my friend stopped me and said, I've been thinking about suicide and how it won't impact my life insurance. And she didn't even ask the question. She just brought
up the topic
and put it on the table.
Yeah.
And I think this is something for us to be aware of because suicide is so it's there.
Yeah.
At any moment, any of us could be thinking about it.
Yeah.
We are not immune to it. But Exodus 19 talks about this idea of, I set life and death before you. Choose life. And the enemy has a game plan of death, and so when suicide's so rampant as a believer, we can't ignore the fact that suicide can impact us as well.
Okay, so this topic is now in the open.
Yeah.
We've invited this conversation to begin. We have assumed that we're bringing this other person
to the safety.
Help.
Yep, to help.
To help, to safety in some way. Like there's a lean into this compassion, decide you're going to walk with this other person.
Yep.
And there's already an inference. Like, how do you want to get help together? We are going to get help.
Yep.
We're doing this together.
Yep.
What does this need to look like? You want to take into consideration what help for them looks like.
Yep.
Okay, we're
now helping them and saying there are resources, right? So one of the most common resources nationwide right now, which is unfortunate that we have it, but it's amazing that we have it. We can actually dial 988. At any moment you can dial 988. You'll be online with a crisis prevention specialist. They'll help you navigate the resources within your community. This is a phenomenal resource that's available to us as easy as 988.
Okay. Is this just like an emergency hotline kind of thing? If in the middle of a situation, or it's broader than
that? They're going to give you resources in the community, like mental health resources.
Nice.
They might give you a behavioral health specialist or center that you can take your friend to, or that you're going to do with an adult. I would also encourage the fact that you can know what your mental health resources are in the community. Just like many churches have I'm old school, so they have a binder, right, of like what are the resources in their community,
right?
Or maybe now we have a web page that has all of that. I work with churches now that have actually introduced a mental health page on their website so people can know who the counselors are in the city. Yeah. So we're going to get them to counseling. Sometimes maybe they just need a helpful coping skill, just what we call a self-support strategy, a self-help strategy. Maybe it's the fact that they just need once in a while, they're like, hey, can we once a week maybe go on a hike? Or maybe once in a week, can we just go on a drive? Like we're doing right now, I just want to drive and then I'll be good. And so maybe they just need journaling. Maybe it's prayer. Maybe it's reading their Bible, like, hey, I like this scripture. Or maybe it's just merely listening to music. So sometimes it's just that and identifying that, or it might be even more professional help. So it might be, hey, I need to see a professional counselor for that. Now, we know through research that not everybody needs professional help. Okay. Some of us just need what helpful coping mechanisms that we have so that we can navigate the crisis. The crisis is for a moment. And so what I would encourage is that that we would look at this not from just a moment lens, but from a long-term lens. Mm-hmm. Some of the leadership training that we've had, it talks about chess and checkers, right? We're not playing checkers with this. We're playing chess with this, the long game with this process. And it's that we understand that life lasts for a lifetime. Mm-hmm. And so we want to actually do that with this person. And so knowing your resources in your community is a significant piece of all of that. Okay. And if you don't know them, go find out.
Right. Well, so that's part of it, getting connected with the resources so that we might get help. Any further, I know this is just an introduction kind of to this topic. What any further advice, things that we need to just be thinking about in general to be helpful for ourselves, for others that are in these situations, struggling, thinking about suicide?
I think something masterful that Jesus would always do, he was so available. and he was available with limits.
Okay.
There was times where the disciples were like, hey, we got to go do this thing. He's like, I'm going to go take this like time at the mountain. Like, I'm going away for a little bit. I think what we've got to be sure of for ourselves is that we're taking care of ourselves in all of this. So know your limits. Know that we can't be there always for someone. Know that you can't always have someone call you anytime. But identifying what that looks like for them, here's what I can do. And so if we can provide ourselves to begin looking and just being aware, like there's so much that we don't see. And this is why I call this windshield time, what we're doing right now. It's just windshield time.
Yeah.
I get to talk to you while looking outside and observing all the things that are in our world, but we won't see something that we're not looking for. Scripture says, seek and ye shall find. And I think for us, if the greatest thing you do is just be observant.
Okay.
Observe your friends. If something's off, mention something. Be like, hey, something's off. You want to talk about it? If something's off, and allowing them. This just happened yesterday. I was at a birthday gathering with family, and we were talking in a conversation. A topic came up, and I saw my brother-in-law. Something like this was off. So I texted him later. I said, hey, I just want to ensure that you're okay. If I may have said something that offended you or rubbed you wrong, like, please, I ask for your forgiveness. But also, I just want to ensure that you're okay. Or I want to see how you're doing. Because sometimes even when I ask, are you okay, we're waiting for them to say, I'm okay.
Right.
So
it's a polite thing to say.
Right. So that's why I've actually taken out of my lexicon, I don't say, hey, how are you? I don't even say that phrase, because if I don't have time to listen, then I'm just telling you to give me a fake thing, and we're not really being authentic of who we are. And so I would say and encourage to just begin asking your friends. When you ask, how are you doing? Know that they might hold you for 15 minutes and tell you how they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
You know, this happened at breakfast with us this morning.
Oh.
Right? You asked, you didn't just ask me how are you doing. You said, tell me about how you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, because...
Yeah, that was loving.
I want to know.
I was seeing this morning from you.
I appreciate that. And it feels good. It's not even just that it feels good. It is right and just. Good. It is right and just. The Lord, Jesus would encounter people so many times, and he wouldn't just say, hey, how are you?
Yeah.
He's like, I see you.
Yeah.
And people would begin telling their story about it, who they are. The Roman soldier, hey, I see you. Your daughter's healed. Mm-hmm. You know, the woman with the issue of blood, I see you. I see you, now you're healed. And how much seeing and healing is connected. Mm-hmm. And sometimes some of the healing process for our friends and the pain is that, oh, you saw the pain. Okay. I can be healed. Like, I can begin the process of healing. Mm-hmm. And even allowing Jesus to see the pain with you allows that healing process.
Yeah. I like the way that your advice went there. Like, don't be afraid to enter into someone else's story with them. Mm-hmm. That's where we use our compassion. At the same time, you cannot be the solution to the other person's problem. No. You are aiding, you are pointing them towards a solution. Hopefully you're partnering with other people to help them towards a solution. You don't take this burden on alone.
Right. And I may even say it that you are a bridge maker to their help, healing, and hope.
Okay.
You become a bridge to that person's help, healing, and hope. And we have the opportunity in people's lives. We have the opportunity to either become a barrier or a bridge to that help, healing, and hope. And that's the gospel, right?
Yeah.
We're the representation of the Imago Dei. We're either a bridge or a barrier to the King. And so I think for us you're either a partner with them in that process, because sometimes I don't want to do it alone, and there are times where I need to do it alone. But we are still interdependent on Him. Yeah. And so in a world where independence is magnetized and glorified, quite frankly, the kingdom is actually built in partnership.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes some of the same problem that we are stuck in our mental health and our depression is that we live in a very individualized society, and we think we don't want to be a burden on anybody else. We started off talking about that. But then also stepping in as the person to heal and solve everything, we take it upon ourselves again as if we're the only ones.
Yeah, and we're not. This is why wellness comes in community. Okay. Have you? And sometimes friends, you might hear this, and you're like, I just got to go find myself. Like, I have to go find myself, and they're like, well, I got out of that relationship because I'm just gonna work on myself, on me.
Yeah.
But you can't work on me outside of community. because you will always be right to you.
Right?
And so you're like, I've been working on me. But you don't know what you look like until you're in the mix of community. And so there was a statement that was made about suicide prevention, and I think it's good for the context of our conversation as we like come to a wrap, is this idea that a former U.S. Surgeon General advisor said this, Dr. David Litz. He said, people die by suicide for many different reasons, but it often comes down to two: a loss of hope and a loss of social connection. And if the Church of Jesus Christ can't do anything about those, we might as well close our doors.
Because isn't that the thing that we're supposed to be about?
And as friends, those of us that are worried about a friend, those of us that want to help a friend that's at that precipice of life or death, like, we have to understand that we are that social connection, and we are to bring him into hope and be a bridge to that hope. And that hope is ultimately found in him. Yeah. And so I would encourage, as we are thinking about this, to identify, am I connected with people that are encouraging and life-giving? And if not, who are my three? What's that safety net for myself? And then ultimately, finding hope in this process of, maybe they look like they're getting better, but then they're not. Like, let's continue to find hope and reach for hope in the midst of all this. Yeah.
Well, this is incredible. Thank you for the advice and for the coaching. You do this kind of thing with churches.
Yeah.
You also do this kind of thing with all different sorts of organizations, schools and workplaces and all that. Can you just give us some information about you? Maybe there's some churches that would like to have you come in and do a soul craft or soul shop.
Soul shop. Nailed it. There you go.
Soul shop. Whatever you call it, workshop kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or beyond that. Yeah.
Yeah, we can definitely. So a soul shop is a full day training where we come and talk about equipping the faith community to minister to those with suicidal desperation. Okay. It's a whole identifying where is that in the Bible, talking about scriptural reference, but also talking about how do we care for our community, those 54% that are sitting in our congregations. I've also worked with churches and their youth groups as well, working with youth pastors to help students with a program called Youth Mental Health First Aid, and really training them up as a resource, much like a CPR, but this is now for our mental health, and encouraging of those things. So there's many different variety of trainings. And then, of course, just things like this, where you're listening to podcasts and or doing ad hoc training and speaking for that. Those are all available. And really, it'll be available through email. Like, I do a lot of stuff just very relationally, because I think a lot of this is done that way. But they can reach out via email, and that's just my last name, .davidj.galvan. So galvan.davidj at gmail.com. And so reaching out that way of what those provide, or david at soulshopmovement.org. Either one of those ways you can do that. But yeah, this has been a great journey. What a beautiful scenery, though.
This was amazing. I was finding myself wanting to stop and look. I'm going to go do that drive again.
Yeah. What a treasure in our community.
It was fun to have that conversation with you in that environment. Thank you for your time. Thank you for giving of yourself, even with your email address. To us. We really appreciate you and your friendship. The way that you love on our students is incredible, and it comes across even in our conversation. So thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah.